I want to just say that I wish Mike Lee weren't sitting here 2 people away from me right now, because as a national security hawk, I have argued with Mike Lee in the 4.5 or 5 years that I've been in the Senate that stuff just like this couldn't possibly happen at the FBI and at the Department of Justice. And so Mike Lee has warned me for 4.5 years, the potential for abuse in this space is terrible, and I constantly defended the integrity and the professionalism of the Bureau and of the Department, that you couldn't have something like this happen.
And I'll leave with some optimism here. I think Democrats and Republicans are willing to make sure this never happens again. That if you open up a counterintelligence investigation on a presidential campaign in the future, there needs to be more checks and balances. I want you to audit the FISA process. Mike Lee and Senator Leahy are probably the standard bearers for civil liberties. Cruz, a lot of people, we all care, but these are the 2 that constantly want to make sure that somebody's watching those who watch us.
I love what you're saying about FISA. As Senator Graham pointed out earlier, Senator Lee and I have worked on trying to put in some protections in FISA, the USA Freedom Act, and so on.
You can't answer this question, but to me, it seems like if something is as standard as that process before you go to a FISA court, to not do it was something that they intended not to do. They didn't want to go through it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it seems to be a logical conclusion. And then you ask yourself, why? Well, because we don't ever want this guy to get elected president. And if he does, it sounds like they want to impeach him. I mean, I can't understand anybody working in this organization understanding the scrutiny that we placed under the FISA courts. And by the way, Mike Lee, count me in. Because we've now seen the abuses you've warned us about. You can smirk again because you were right. But, I mean, it just seems to me that this organization, this closely held organization of highly educated, highly experienced people, I have to believe, that they were handpicked for this process. They were picked because they had some of the best reputations in there. They had to know that this was going to come to this.
Well, you can't sit here and tell us that these errors only occurred with regard to this FISA application process.
Right. We've identified problems in the past. I will say we've never done a dive into one as deep as this.
As have a number of us, by the way,
Right.
Senator Lee and others of us. We understand that there are issues relating to the FISA process.
And so whether or not people are going to agree with your opening headline on whether or not political bias was a relevant factor in the opening in the investigation, there is no doubt that there's a massive cultural failing inside DOJ and at the FBI that would allow renewals to come in the 2nd, 3rd, and the 4th case without anybody ever thinking that their work is going to be scrutinized again. If this is what happens, and this is arguably the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th most important investigation in the history of the FBI, if this can happen in an investigation where they would expect there's going to be a lot of subsequent scrutiny, what is your suspicion about what happens in a regular FISA application or renewal process? If the American people hear this and they say this can happen against a campaign for the presidency of the United States, what happens in an ordinary FISA case? We're saying there is a systematic cultural failure of accountability at the Bureau related to the FISA process. Mike Lee doesn't drink, but I'd buy him whiskey right now if he did, because there are a whole bunch of things we've argued about for a long time, and he's right about things that I think ought not be right.